So the Chiefs definitely have some questions on the roster, there's no doubt about it. However, I think some are overlooking how much of an impact a few key moves will make this upcoming season, and in today's video, I'll talk about some of the biggest concerns I've seen about the Chiefs online, including Kenneth Walker not being enough of a needle mover, Andy Reid not adapting his scheme in a decade, along with a couple key young players I think could make quite the difference, hopefully early on this season. But first, how about those? First up, Creed Humphrey was the first Chiefs player to crack the NFL's top 100 players list heading into the 2026 NFL season. This list is voted on by the players themselves, by the way. Some are going to agree with this list, some are going to not. It just kind of depends. But Creed Humphrey came in at 94, which brought him down just one spot from 93 last year. Now, I have seen some Chiefs fans saying, hey, Creed Humphrey deserves to be way higher than the 90s. This makes no sense, but I think it's more about positional value than anything else, because even last year, when Creed was 93rd or ranked 93rd on this list, he was the only center to even make the top 100 list. And he might also be the only one to make it again this year that plays the position, so I would say that's something to be very proud of. And Creed has been rock solid in his career so far with KC and just seems to keep getting better. For example, over the last 2 years alone, Creed has only allowed 15 total pressures and 1 sack in roughly 2,300 snaps played. So yeah, well-deserved for Humphrey, who's the clear-cut best player along the Chiefs' offensive line. With that being said, I still don't have a ton of concerns about the O-line heading into the season. Some might. The question mark is right tackle. Josh Simmons is solid. Kingsley Suamataia looked pretty good out there, all things considered. First year playing guard and will only get better. You got Creed at center, Trey Smith at right guard, and then we'll see about right tackle. Jalen Moore, most likely, could also be Khalil Benson. We'll have to wait and see. But regardless of that, last year when the Chiefs were on offensive tackle number 5 and 6, you did see some struggles. That is no surprise. No team in the NFL is going to survive losing Josh Simmons, Jawan Taylor, Wanye Morris, and Jalen Moore to injury, with Esa Pole, an international pathway player, Jason Chu-Goderick out there as your bookends. That's no disrespect to either of them either. I'm a Pole believer as far as him being a piece along the line for the future. But again, no O-line of any team is going to be fantastic out there once you get that banged up. With that being said, I still have seen several comments from Chiefs fans insinuating the main problem with the Chiefs' ineffective run game last year was more on the O-line than it was on the running back room itself. Well, I'll get to that here in a moment because I'm just going to disagree. I'll back up why I think that is as well. But let me first address this comment that does not think any of the upgrades are going to matter if Andy Reid doesn't evolve or adapt his scheme. In fact, this guy goes as far as saying they haven't evolved or adapted in the last 10 years. And I just think that's wrong. Andy Reid is going to have the same foundational scheme, right? It's a West Coast style offense, a lot of quick passes, a lot of shotgun. That's just Andy Reid in this offense, but they do introduce wrinkles. And a good example of that, even if you're looking in recent years since Mahomes became the starter, they had Tyreek Hill set the league on fire coming out the gate and then traded away Tyreek Hill a few years later. And that year that they traded away Tyreek Hill was the year Patrick Mahomes went nuclear. 5,200 yards. He won league MVP and Super Bowl MVP again without one of the best route runners and deep ball threats of this generation in Tyreek Hill. So they did adapt. They did evolve. They made it work, and they proceeded to make multiple Super Bowls after that. We're never going to see wholesale changes in the Chiefs' offense as long as Andy Reid is calling the plays, okay? We know that, but I do think he does adapt and evolve. He's grown a bit stale in recent years, and this is a big offseason for him. They believe, though, that upgrading the position coaches and the run game were the biggest problems, and I think having an actual real run game again is going to open up so much in this offense. I interviewed Pete Sweeney of the Kansas City Star earlier this week, and he talked about the Chiefs facing the most light boxes in the NFL last season, and that's not going to continue this year because Kenneth Walker is now in the fold, and he is a very dangerous home run threat. I mean, he had the most explosive 15-yard runs, or the highest rate of 15-yard runs in the NFL last year, only behind Devon Achane. Well, that's why defenses are going to start to load the box in some capacity, which in turn is going to help open up the pass game, and Mahomes is going to start carving them up. Basically, defenses, they're going to have to choose, and they'll be damned if they do decide to load the box and Mahomes starts to get more favorable looks in the pass game. And then they'll also be damned if they don't load the box and Kenneth Walker starts to really just have his way and bust off some big runs. Now, as far as the offensive line being the bigger problem than the running back room in recent years, here's an easy counter to that. Don't you think out of any offseason, if the Chiefs were seriously worried about the state of the offensive line, that they would have done something, anything, that this would have been the time to address that no matter the cost? Because QB1, who they just reached another massive extension with, the best quarterback in the game, is coming off a season-ending knee injury. Well, instead, they did absolutely nothing to the room, even moving on from Jawan Taylor, and on top of that, traded away some tackle depth in Wanye Morris. So the front office and Andy Reid are telling us all we really need to know. The running back room was the huge problem, not the offensive line, and the stats really back that up. The Chiefs were 17th in their run block grade last year per PFF, much better in pass pro, but the run game, the run blocking aspect of it rather, is average. Not perfect. They're going to make some mistakes. They can definitely get better. I'm not excusing them. But when you combine that with one of the least explosive running back rooms over the last 2.5 decades, the run game is bound to be abysmal. To further drive this home, I have a pretty eye-popping stat about the Chiefs running back room over the last 2 years that I saw shared today. And coming up next, I'll process through that and talk about some key players that will be asked a lot of very early on. And if they deliver, it's definitely going to help the team out this season. But first, did you know that your liver performs over 500 functions a day and impacts your energy, digestion, and fat metabolism? It also filters out everything you eat and drink, and its overall health can be affected by fatty foods, sugar, processed foods, and even pollution. Well, that's where the sponsor of today's video, Dose for Your Liver, is here to help. This is a daily 2-ounce liquid shot featuring a clinically backed formula that promotes evidence-based liver support. Practically speaking, Dose for Your Liver helps aid digestion, supports energy, and helps with occasional bloating. All you got to do is take a daily liver shot made with organic herbs that, believe it or not, tastes like orange juice. The reason why Dose for Your Liver went with a liquid formula, by the way, is because it absorbs more efficiently than capsules or powders, and one shot of Dose for Your Liver is equivalent to 17 cold-pressed turmeric shots. I honestly do feel more energy from it, and I'm all about becoming the healthiest version of myself, and Dose for Your Liver is great for anyone that wants to make sure they are getting the daily liver support needed to have a positive impact on their liver enzyme levels. So what are you waiting for? You can get 35% off your first subscription today by clicking the link below or going to dosedaily.co/HBTC. That's dosedaily.co/HBTC. All right, so thanks to Marcus Dash of Chief Concerns, who shared about this in a recent video himself. But thanks to him, we now know that over the last 2 seasons, the Chiefs have had 880 rushing attempts, with only 10 of them going for 20 or more yards, and 3 of those were by Patrick Mahomes himself. So only 7 attempts in 2 seasons went for 20 yards or more by a Chiefs running back. That is honestly a travesty and plays a big role into why the Chiefs not only brought in Kenneth Walker on a big multi-year deal, but also why they upgraded their third down back in Amari DiMercato and also drafted Emmett Johnson in the 5th round to develop and also help raise the floor of the room in case injuries hit. Emmett Johnson was seen working out recently in training, looking pretty good out there. I mean, as good as you can while doing drills, without pads, without contact, all of that. But more could certainly be asked of him this upcoming season, especially later on, if he can develop a bit more in pass protection specifically. But that's why comments like this guy really make me confused, because some are actually of the belief that Kenneth Walker is not going to move the needle, and really the revamped running back room as a whole is not going to move the needle for the Chiefs offense, because the problem was actually on the offensive line. I'm just not seeing it. 32nd in run blocking. Yeah, you just made that up out of your imagination, because the data does not back that up, does not show it. No team's offensive line can survive their top 4 tackles being out due to injury, and that is a pretty rare thing to happen. I mean, there were runs every single game that could have gone for more yards, but Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco did not have the burst to take advantage of it. Pacheco specifically just did not have the vision and was a liability in the receiving game on top of that. But even when the O-line wasn't perfect, running backs are paid to make plays, and that's what K9 was brought in to do. I'm not buying the RB2 stuff behind Zach Charbonnet in Seattle either. I mean, Walker ended up with more yards and carries than Charbonnet, who didn't tear his ACL until the playoffs. Instead, I look at them more as a dynamic 1-2 punch, which is really a needed thing in today's NFL. And Seattle asked more out of Charbonnet on third downs in the red zone and goal line situations. But what happened once Charbonnet got injured? Walker went on to win Super Bowl MVP because he kind of can do it all. And that's the hope and the belief from the Chiefs, being able to use Kenneth Walker to run between the tackles, along the outside, as well as in the receiving game. They believe his threat as a receiving back to be an underrated ability as well, and he is absolutely going to move the needle. There is no doubt about it. I've seen a few comments that also say, hey, hopefully the Chiefs don't plan on using him too much because he's a bit injury prone, so they need to protect him from himself. Well, they're basing that on some of the soft tissue injuries he's had. I don't see anything to be overly concerned about regarding that. The most concerning year for Kenneth Walker was in 2024, where he did miss 2 games with an oblique injury, then 2 more later on with a calf strain, and from there, basically right after that, was placed on IR week 16 with a grade 2 ankle sprain on top of all of that. Last year, though, he played every single game in the regular season and every single game in the playoffs. So sure, injuries can happen when you were somebody that explosive and dynamic. Soft tissue injuries are a thing. Just that's the reality of the NFL, but that's not just exclusive to running backs. It's also an issue with wide receivers and defensive backs as well. The hope this year is the Chiefs are on the better side of injury luck, which is something they haven't really had in the last couple of years. That's why Amari DiMercato is here as well as Emmett Johnson. They can still be a bit of a running back room by committee at times if needs be, though of course, when healthy, K9 is going to be the primary workhorse. Someone else who should get quite a bit of work early on in the season, hopefully, is someone the Chiefs believe they got a bit of a steal in, with that being defensive tackle Peter Woods, their 29th pick of the first round during this year's draft. I spoke with Pete Sweeney recently, the credentialed beat reporter for the KC Star, earlier this week specifically, and when I asked him about Peter Woods, he said, much like Simmons last year, he thinks the Chiefs inside the building really feel like they might have stole one with Peter Woods. And when you look at his draft stock, it did indeed fall, because after the 2024 college season, Woods was projected to go top 5, maybe top 10 in this year's draft specifically, so you're looking way too far ahead 2 seasons out. But after the 2025 college season, Woods fell all the way to 29th overall, and that's why the Chiefs believe they got a steal. They believe he was the best, or at least one of the best defensive tackles in this entire draft class. And when you look at Peter Woods and why he fell, it was a bit of a mixed bag. He got a lot more attention his last year in college compared to the year prior because of how effective he was playing. There was also coaching changes the offseason prior to the 2025 college season. And I think Clemson's defense just lost some of the spark and competitive edge overall because they were not fighting for the playoffs in the back half of the season. There was a lot of reasons why his stock fell and his output wasn't as consistent as it was the year prior, but I think the Chiefs believe they can get a lot more out of him. And if you look at the defensive line, specifically along the interior, they really miss a guy like Turk Wharton who could take advantage of the fact that Chris Jones is going to be getting a lot of double teams. Well, that's why I think Peter Woods is going to be the X factor along the line, specifically the interior. They do have R. Mason Thomas, whom they drafted in the second round. He's going to be more of a third down guy, out there on third downs, maybe even exclusively at first as a speed rusher, but he can play a role. But the X factor along the line out of everybody for me is Peter Woods, because the quickest way to the quarterback is straight up the middle after all, and Omar Norman-Lott was supposed to be that Turk Wharton replacement last year, but he tore his ACL week 6, week 7 against the Raiders, and still was not out there practicing during OTAs. So I'm not really sure what to expect out of Omar Norman-Lott. Not even sure if he's going to be ready to start out the season. And because of that, sure, you are going to be leaning on Chris Jones and Kyrus Tonga, but Tonga's more of a run-stuffing nose tackle that's going to help stop the run. Tonga does have more pass rush juice, though, especially compared to Derek Nottie or Mike Pennell from last year, but his primary function is to stop the run, to clog up the middle, and that's why, to me, if Peter Woods can come out quickly, so week 1, ball out, and shine in this defensive scheme under Spags and Joe Cullen, I think it's going to have a major impact in the best way possible on this defense. I mean, they're really going to need it because that secondary is very young and inexperienced when you look at who they brought in compared to who they lost in free agency. Their most experienced defensive back is L'Jarius Sneed, who they just signed recently. Alohi Gilman in the safety room, first year in the system. Noel Williams, Christian Fulton, those are the vets in the cornerback room aside from Sneed, and they're only heading into year 2. And to be clear, I do think the secondary will come around eventually. You're going to have some growing pains very early on in the season, but someone that might not make an impact early yet could be much more of a factor later on in the season as the Chiefs gear up for the playoffs is the 5th-round rookie wideout Cyrus Allen. He's not only been standing out early on during OTAs, which, yes, are padless practices, but he could also be seen in some recent training footage, running routes, and working out with the route god himself via these clips shared on social media. And while it's just routes on air, he looks pretty sharp, pretty crisp out there, and was arguably one of the biggest standouts at the Senior Bowl after leading the Big 12 last year with 13 receiving touchdowns. Well, the Chiefs took note of that, and while he very well could be life after Rashee Rice out of the slot, which is where Cyrus Allen primarily operated and is 5'11", 180 pounds, it does scream a bit slot receiver to me. That's fine though, and even with Rice on the roster this year, there could still be some usage for Cyrus Allen if injuries hit the room or he could continue climbing the ranks and work his way up the wide receiver depth chart, maybe as wide receiver number 4, and start sprinkling into the offense pretty early, or maybe even more so later on, just like Rashee Rice did during his rookie year. He was more productive in the back half, and the same went for Xavier Worthy his rookie year. The real test is going to be during training camp when the pads come on. That's not only for guys like Cyrus Allen, but also specifically in the trenches when we watch the right tackle battle and the battle along the interior of the defensive line with Peter Woods. Definitely excited to see how all these guys are going to end up looking, but you guys got to let me know your thoughts. Who are you going to be watching for and looking forward to seeing the most come training camp? Let me know in the comments down below either way. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?